Welcome back, y'all. Ryan Hall here with the weather forecast. I've got a huge update for you on those developing tropical cyclones out in the Atlantic Ocean. I also have a pretty concerning update about the future of severe weather here in the United States over the next week or so. It looks like we're going to be in an active pattern for quite some time. But before we get into all that, we have to talk about what happened last night. Unfortunately, another devastating tornado occurred last night in Texas in the town of Matador. And this one looks pretty bad, guys. Right here, the Lubbock Fire and Rescue is saying that the town of Matador has experienced an unprecedented tornado. For example, we've seen some pictures of cars that are completely unrecognizable, well-built homes that are slabbed, and all the kinds of stuff that you hear about whenever there is a violent tornado. And some of the latest stuff that we're hearing is that there are at least 4 fatalities. The number of injuries is different depending on where you look, so that tells me that the number is going up, and at least a good portion of the town, maybe even half of the town, was completely leveled. And the crazy thing is that our team, our Y'all Squad team, actually just arrived back in Kentucky last night while that tornado was happening. So we've been in Perryton delivering over $25,000 in relief aid to these people for the past week. That tornado happened on June 15th, and now the moment that they've come back here, it looks like we're going to turn right around and go back to Texas. So obviously we've depleted a lot of our resources in Perryton. We help those people out a lot. I want to make sure that we can do the same thing for Matador, or maybe even more, because it looks like they're going to need even more help. So once again, I'm going to call for the Y'all Squad to please come together and do what we do best. So please go to theyallsquad.org and help us show up for these people like we have in recent disasters, and hopefully we can even do more for this specific one than we have before, because we've got the nonprofit set up and everything. So y'allsquad.org, please go do that right now. Even like the smallest amount will help. But otherwise, we do have to start thinking about the future, okay? There's more severe weather coming, so let's get into the forecast now. Okay, so let's start off with the severe weather outlook for today. We've got a big slight risk of severe weather from Wyoming down through the Front Range of Colorado. This includes Denver, and then of course down into New Mexico, portions of the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles. This does not include Perryton or Matador, but you guys are in the marginal risk there, so we do have to be worried about severe weather once again in the panhandle of Texas. And it doesn't end there. In fact, it gets worse tomorrow on Friday, June 23rd. We've got an even larger slight risk of severe weather that expands from South Dakota all the way down to the Mexico border pretty much. And this does include the panhandle of Texas once again. Things do start moving east on the day 3 outlook though, but the fact that we're already seeing a slight risk on the day 3 means that this is probably going to be pretty intense. We're going to have strong storms, possibly even large hail and tornadoes in Iowa down into Missouri on June 24th. And would you believe it if I told you we've got a day 4 outlook as well along the Ohio River Valley here in Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana on June 25th. And this looks like it's also going to be pretty significant as well in terms of severe weather. So things are really active for June. Like, this is supposed to be when I take a vacation. All right. June is not supposed to be this active with tornadoes and severe weather, but here we are. And of course, we're going to keep you updated on this as we go forward. Let's take a look at what the radar could look like as we go through the rest of the day today. Of course, we do have some risk of severe weather over here in the Carolinas associated with our cutoff low. We're continuing to see flooding problems along the Appalachian Mountains. This is going to continue to be a problem today. Severe weather is going to be possible around the Outer Banks, maybe even down into South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida as well. As you can see, during the heating of the day, we get some of those reds and yellows popping up. The main threat is going to be hail, rain, and wind, but we can't rule out an isolated tornado or two, especially in the upper right quadrant of this system up here in North Carolina. I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of tornadoes with that, but I don't expect to see any sort of outbreak or anything. The bigger severe weather risk, I think, is actually going to be back here a little bit farther to the west in some of the places that were hit hard yesterday in Wyoming, down through Denver, and then of course up into the panhandle of Texas. I don't think it's going to be as bad as yesterday, but it's something that we have to watch very closely. In June, whenever you have the amount of instability that we have right now, you cannot disregard any storm, okay? Everything has to be watched very closely. And then of course, as we get into Friday, we're going to see another mesoscale convective system try to form here around Dallas and then move down to the south. These have been notorious this month for causing widespread power outages. So make sure you guys are ready for that. From Dallas all the way down to Houston, maybe even Shreveport, down towards southern Louisiana. This could be a pretty big situation for you guys. And then another round of severe weather is going to move in Friday night. Look at this. Panhandle of Texas, once again, we got supercells capable of producing tornadoes right around Perryton and Matador once again. Unfortunately, this is something that's going to continue to happen as we go forward. We've also got a decent chance for severe weather up here in Nebraska. okay? Now, the farther out we go, the less reliable this becomes. Farther you look into the future, the less likely the forecast is going to be right. But this is showing a pretty powerful system coming together here as we go into Saturday that may try to move into Iowa and Missouri as a large damaging wind event. And we'll just have to continue to watch that as we go forward. But everybody that gets impacted by either of these systems as we go through the next several days needs to be watching very closely and paying attention to the weather. Of course, subscribe to this channel and the main channel, the Ryan Hall Y'all channel, because when stuff hits the fan, a lot of times either myself or Andy One's going to go live and we'll be able to walk you through that, okay? And we're going to be ready for that as we monitor these systems as we go forward. And here's where things get interesting, right? As we go past Friday and Saturday, our main piece of energy up here is going to try to eject off to the east. Our pattern is going to finally break up. But when that happens on Saturday, we are going to see another really good chance of severe weather firing up farther east. And this could be a pretty impactful day. It could be a pretty strong day as far as severe weather goes, as we are going to have pretty strong convective available potential energy values. We're going to have some wind shear available, and we're just going to have the history of knowing what these storms are capable of doing, kind of moving over here to a much more populated area, and an area that hasn't experienced significant severe weather in a little bit, especially not in June. So hopefully we're going to be able to nail this forecast and get you guys some exact updates on what's going to be happening here this weekend by tomorrow, which we will have a main channel video tomorrow on that. But just know that we are watching the very real possibility of significant severe weather pretty much anywhere in this corridor over the next 4 to 5 days, okay? So if you're in that area, please be weather aware and do not let your guard down. And of course, the wacky weather doesn't end there. We have to visit the tropics, where we have Tropical Storm Brett getting ready to make it to the Lesser Antilles. It's probably going to go into the Caribbean and then get sheared apart by wind shear before making it over to Central America. It doesn't look like it's going to curve up into the Gulf of Mexico at this point, but honestly, it's still too early to really say anything with any sort of confidence at that time range. So we're watching Brett, but right now it looks like it's not going to be a worst case scenario. It's just going to be an abnormal thing for June to see a tropical storm wandering around out here. But we do have another wave that has officially formed up enough to start looking more interesting. That's Tropical Depression 4. And this is the latest information on it. Okay, right now we got sustained winds at 35 miles per hour. That means the next update, we're probably going to see this be strong enough to get a name. It looks like it's going to be Tropical Storm Cindy all the way until it gets to around the 20 degrees north latitude. And then it's going to start maybe weakening into a depression as once again it encounters some wind shear. That's going to be our saving grace this year in the US if this continues to happen, right? We've got incredibly strong waters in the Atlantic. Multiple storms are going to form, but if we can maintain enough wind shear down here in the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and along the eastern side of the US, that might act as a shield to keep these storms from getting to us or weakening before they get to us. If that shield breaks though, if we lose the wind shear for even a brief period of time, we've got to be concerned on the coast about the potential for hurricane impacts, because I'm telling you guys, we haven't seen anything like this before in recorded history. All right, the Atlantic is hot, okay, and it's way hotter than normal. Like, whenever records are broken, usually it's a little bit. This is not a little bit. The entire Atlantic Ocean is much hotter than what it has ever been before, as far as we know, and we don't know what that means as far as these storms. So we're going to continue to see waves come off of Africa. They're going to continue to try to march to the west. El Nino's ramping up, so we might have a good situation going on with the wind shear. But I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just saying, hey, if you live along the coast, don't disregard anything. Go ahead and have your plans ready, your hurricane preparedness plans ready, because in a worst case scenario, something detrimental could definitely happen in here, okay? Once again, if you would please go over to the y'allsquad.org and help us come together to really help these people out in Matador, Texas. We're going to be able to go down there with resources, supplies, literally give money to people. Like that's something that we do that I don't think any of the other nonprofits do. Like, we find families and we give them money rather than having them wait 10 years for some sort of assistance or placement for something. It's just like, hey, you got hit by a tornado. Here's some resources. Here's what we've got. The more resources that we have, the more we're going to be able to do. So go to the y'allsquad.org and please help us out with that. And if you can't, that's fine too. Just like this video and share it so we can get this out to as many people as possible. And I'm going to get to work. I'm going to be extremely busy over the next little bit. So please make sure you're following me on Twitter if you want intermittent updates. But otherwise, there's going to be plenty of videos and live streams coming up over the next little bit, unfortunately. So I'll see you there, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Ooh.